Story 1. This just happened about an hour ago, and I am still fuming. I was sitting in a local cafe in town, trying to get some work done. It is the last week of the school holidays, so the place was absolutely packed. I managed to grab the only free table, which unfortunately was a 4-seater. I felt a little guilty, but there was literally nowhere else to sit. After buying my coffee and a slice of cake, I set up my laptop to begin working. About 10 minutes later, a woman came over with 2 young children in tow. Let's call her the entitled mother. She did not greet me, but instead said, "Excuse me, you are going to have to move." I was a bit taken aback and asked, "Oh, sorry, is there a problem?" She pointed at my table. "Yes, this is a 4-person table, and you are just 1 person. We need it. There are 3 of us." I looked around and said, "I'm sorry, but there aren't any other tables free. I did check. As soon as a smaller one opens up, I will happily move." I thought that was a reasonable offer. Apparently, she did not agree. She actually scoffed and said, "That's not good enough. My kids are tired and hungry. They need to sit down now. You are just on your laptop, and that is not important. We need to eat." Her children were starting to whine, and she was giving me a very intense glare. I was feeling really uncomfortable, but I calmly replied, "Look, I am a paying customer just like you. I am not moving until another table is free." That was when she completely lost her temper. She huffed loudly and exclaimed, "This is unbelievable, the selfishness of some people." Then she marched straight up to the counter to complain to the young man working there. I could not hear the full conversation, but I saw her pointing in my direction while the young man simply shook his head. A moment later, he walked over to me. I fully expected him to ask me to move, but instead he leaned in and said quietly, "Sorry about that. You are fine where you are. Just ignore her." He then returned to the entitled mother and explained that he could not force a customer to move and that she would have to wait for another table. The entitled mother grabbed her children by the hand, muttered something about never coming here again, and stormed out. On her way, she knocked over a menu stand. The most ironic part was that a 2-seater table had just opened up at that very moment as she was leaving. Some people's nerve is simply unbelievable. Story 2. Oh boy, guys, I 25 female am just at a loss here. So, some backstory. My father is a wonderful, wonderful parent. He has always wanted to be involved in my life. Parents went through a very messy divorce when I was 2 or 3, so I literally have no memory of my parents ever being together. My mom lucked out and got full custody, with my dad getting visitation, where my brother and I got to stay with him every other weekend. Basically got to see my dad 4 days a month, if I was lucky, and the occasional half-holiday. Anyway, on to my mom. We got along practically my entire adolescent life. We started fighting more often as I got older. The reason this is important to the story, or rather my current situation, is because you all need to know what happens when Mom and I fight. Most fights with my mom happen due to her feeling less important than other people. We fought about my dad, my stepmom, and my boyfriend because, in certain situations, she has felt that they were prioritized over her. She gets very emotional, yelling, screaming, crying, and will not listen to reason. She has said before that she feels punished when other people get more of my time than her. She has accused me of not loving her, even when I am actively showing how much I love her, and I feel very hurt that she feels unloved, but also upset because I should not have to prove my love, when it should be a known fact. She also harbors things for months without telling me, and idealizes situations and becomes irate if they do not turn out the way she envisioned. The biggest problem is she does not listen when we fight. I could very calmly and sweetly explain something to her and try to argue my side, and it just goes right in and back out. Her behavior can be very immature, and it often feels like I am the adult, and she is the child. On to the issue at hand. She casually, but very firmly, mentioned recently that she wants to walk me down the aisle, ideally alone, but if not, with my father. She believes it is her right, since she raised me. I shut it down, but she insisted, and I said we would talk about it when an actual wedding is being planned. I was not prepared for this. My anxiety went through the roof. I do not want her to walk me down the aisle. My father missed out on so many milestones during my life. Despite wanting to be involved, I want him there with me, alone. I think it's pretty rude for her to say she raised me, as if my dad was some sort of deadbeat, when he absolutely wasn't. This is the one thing he gets. She got everything else. She got to see me like 8 times more often than my dad, like literally experienced over 5,000 days with me during my childhood, when my dad only got about 700. He is the one I want walking me down that aisle. I know my mother. This will be a huge deal, and I am not ready mentally for the fallout. I am trying to figure out the best way to handle this, hopefully getting through to her, but I just don't know. My boyfriend and I have been dating for many years, and intend to get married eventually. We don't know when, but I want a game plan for this well in advance, so I can talk to my mom about it and get it situated as soon as possible. I'd rather give it time to heal than her still be bitter at the wedding. And I do want her at the wedding, and I want to go dress shopping with her, and am more than happy to have her involved in the wedding party. She just cannot walk me down the aisle. Thanks for reading. Edit. Thank you all so much for the wonderful advice, and just caring about my situation. I think I have a lot of wonderful information ranging from conversational tactics to helpful books, and feel prepared to take on this situation. I will not be cutting off my mother in any way, though. Whereas I appreciate everyone's willingness to help, I certainly disagree with my mother being a narcissist. One Reddit post does not sum up a person. She is far more complex than this brief moment in her life, and has many other adorable and fun-loving qualities that are not reflected in a post that only addresses one of my worst moments with her. My mother has had a horribly tough life, and I can see exactly where a lot of her behaviors stem from being physically and emotionally abused, to being cheated on, to having a few very wonderful friends pass away very young. There is good reason for her to cling dearly to family. This does not excuse her behavior. She needs to move on, heal, and learn to help herself. All I'm saying is she is not a narcissist. She is deeply hurt, and has been for a very long time. I have to make her understand that I cannot fill the emotional role that a life partner can, and that she cannot continue to live life the way she has been. Story 3. So this happened just a few months ago. I work inside a Target where I work with phones. Technically, I work in a different company that uses the Target stores as the setup, since my setup is in the electronics department. I'll usually answer the electronics phone if I'm the only one available. Just like any other day, I get a call and answer. Target Electronics, how can I help you? Yes, I'd like to speak to the person selling the phones. The husband replied. Oh yes, that's me. Are you calling about Consumer Cellular? That's a phone company that works with Target exclusively. Me and my wife would like to switch over from our current provider. We just got new phones, and they don't work at all. I'm sorry to hear that. Were you wanting to get new phones with us today as well? Yes, we do. You wouldn't happen to have a Galaxy SJ7. Now I know we might post older phones, but I wasn't sure if we actually had that phone in stock or even sell it anymore. Well, give me one moment to check, because I believe we used to sell that phone. But even if we do, you wouldn't be able to get it with Consumer Cellular since it'd be locked under AT&T. I looked, and of course we didn't have any. I'm sorry, sir, but unfortunately we do not have that. Could I interest you in the A21? Then I hear her, the Karen losing it in the background. Well, do they have it, or do they don't have it? Well, is that one even as good as the phone I actually want? Karen says. Sir, if you'd like, let your wife know that the phone I'm offering is actually much better than the one she wants and has a very reasonable price. Do you have any cases for these phones? Unfortunately, we do not. I usually suggest to people to try Amazon. For some reason, the mere mention of Amazon triggers Karen. Are you serious? I'm so sick of hearing I have to get everything from Amazon. She keeps ranting about this and never actually takes the phone to talk to me. Her husband just sighs and says we'll try this again later. Now I thought that'd be the end of it, but guess who comes in an hour later? Now Karen looked like a typical older Karen and was practically leaking out impatient vibes. Her husband looked so exhausted and just clearly wanted to get this over with. "Hi, how can I help you?" "Yes, we called about switching over." "Yes, of course. Take a seat and we can get started. Now who will be the main account holder?" "Why does that matter?" Karen asks. "Well, because that's who we'd want to start with first, and they'd be in charge of any bill changes or phone changes later on." Now again, who is going to be the account holder? "I don't know. Mickey Mouse? I kid you not, she said this, and I have no idea why." "She'll be the holder," her husband answers. "Okay, great, so I need your driver's license, ma'am. And do you guys want new phone numbers or keeping the old ones?" "The old ones." "Okay, so I'll need the account number and PIN number of your current provider." "You never told us that. Are you serious right now? First you tell us you have the phone I wanted, then suddenly don't. Then you tell me I have to use Amazon, which I hate. And now you're telling me to have numbers that nobody would ever have or know." Her husband sits in silence, just staring off into the distance. I could see his soul dying from where I stood. "Ma'am, I tried to tell you everything I could, but you kept interrupting the conversation between me and your husband to where he had to hang up." "Well, what's your name and who's your manager? I want to tell them how rude and how horrible the service was." Joke's on her, my actual manager didn't even work at the store and I couldn't give out the number, but I humored her by saying my name and to try to talk to guest service. They get up with her husband still not saying a word and walk away. Then I watch this gem as they round the corner. Karen, glaring daggers at her husband. "Are you happy now? Happy that I'm not getting my phone? I bet that man hasn't been happy since the day he said I do at your wedding." Story 4. The day started about as unpleasant as you would expect, with rain falling all day. Following the advice from many of you, I decided to bite the bullet and officially report the situation with Anna to my boss. I wrote a message detailing her unprofessional behavior, the threats involving the tea, and her constant demands that I do her job. The response I received was a very corporate and dry, "Thank you for the information." And it seems it worked. For the first time this entire month, Anna actually showed up to our shared shift on time. She spent the whole morning acting as if absolutely nothing had happened. My equipment is kept in a locked storage unit on site, and she had the key. When I asked her for it, which is the normal procedure, she casually told me she had left it sticking in the lock of the door. In a public park. I was furious. Who on earth leaves a key to a room full of equipment in the door? Especially when that door is in a complete blind spot for all the park's security cameras. I managed to get in touch with Anna's counterpart, the other site administrator, let's call her Lisa. I wanted to get her advice, and she recommended that I try to speak with our boss in person, somewhere private, so there would be no digital footprints. But she also confirmed I was not imagining things. She told me that Anna's hostile attitude had upset almost everyone, including most of the ride operators, over the past 3 months. Apparently, her being difficult was common knowledge. Lisa also shared a story that explained a lot. A few weeks ago, one of their mutual friends was getting married, and Anna desperately wanted to attend. She asked Lisa to cover her shift the night before. Lisa, who is very family-oriented, had already told Anna at the start of the summer that she needed at least a week's notice for any shift changes. So, she replied with a simple, "Hi, no." Anna then complained to the boss, who, instead of addressing the issue with her, just put me on her shift. I ended up working as both the sound technician and the site administrator for the day. Thankfully, I got paid for both roles, but it showed a clear pattern. The rest of the day was a festival for kids and parents, lots of dancing, silly songs, and contests. To my surprise, Anna was completely missing. She just disappeared. She left quietly, sending me a text that said, "The keys to the storage are on the table inside. Sign them out for yourself. That's all. Thank you for the workday. See you tomorrow." This felt very suspicious, But honestly, I was just relieved not to have to listen to any more of her nonsense. Sorry if this update sounds a bit dull, but life is unpredictable. For some reason, I have a strong feeling that tomorrow's concert is going to be intense. All of the higher management is supposed to be visiting the site, and I cannot shake the feeling that something is about to happen. Friday. Anna spent the entire day doing absolutely nothing except riding around the festival on a golf cart, laughing with another colleague from the administration team. Let's call him Alex. My relationship with Alex has been strained since the very beginning. On this particular day, he asked me to help him set up a large tent while I was in the middle of assembling microphone stands for the concert. When I told him I was busy, this conversation happened. Alex: "Hey, why aren't you helping with the tent? I told you I needed a hand." Me: "Still working. Ask Anna, I'm busy with the stands." Alex: "Anna's a girl." Me: "That girl gets a score of 980 on the punching bag machine." It was absolutely ridiculous, and the whole time, Anna was just sitting on the edge of the stage, doing nothing at all. I was annoyed for a while, but eventually had to let it go because I had a 5-hour concert set up ahead of me. Funnily enough, the concert went perfectly. Nothing was broken, damaged, or stolen. It was as if a switch had been flipped, and I was dealing with normal Anna for the rest of the night. Saturday. Today was the complete opposite. I worked with Lisa, the other competent administrator, and it was wonderful. She actually listens and communicates. It was a breath of fresh air, and it solidified my final decision. I am leaving on September 5th, the day my contract ends. No extensions. And just as I made peace with this decision, my phone rang. It was a call from Anna's number, but on the line was my boss's boss, asking if I would be willing to extend my contract. I told him I would send a message with my decision later. While on the train home, I sent the message, confirming that September 5th would be my last day. Suddenly, my direct boss replied to that same message chain, trying to guilt-trip me. "Hey, we told you the festival was extended." I honestly don't remember what your answer was, but are you sure you can't stay? I have no idea how I'm going to replace you. How do you even react to that kind of message? You write to one person, and then another responds from their profile. I decided to message my boss directly and privately. "I'm writing this to you in a private message, so please let's keep it between us. I'm completely burned out, and college is starting. No one can cover for me there. Anna once told me, if you leave early, I'll just replace you and get your salary, and frankly, I'm fine with that arrangement." The response I got from her was, "Got it, okay." 4 minutes later, another message followed. "Are you sure?" I confirmed that I was. "For the salary they are paying me, they will not find another qualified technician willing to do this job. But I let some of my friends know about the opening just in case." So, that is where things stand now. Anna and I have completely stopped communicating outside of work. We only exchange brief words about tasks, and that is it. I think this will be the last update, unless someone does something monumentally foolish again. Thank you all so much for the advice and support throughout this entire ordeal. I truly appreciate it. I sincerely hope none of you ever end up working in a company with someone as toxic as she has been. Story 5. I have worked with children since I was a teenager, and I also earned a degree in education. I usually work with kids between 7 and 10 years old. At the time of this story, I was both a teacher and an after-school counselor. This all took place at an after-school program. I want to make it clear that I have never disliked a child before this experience, especially since, in most cases, the child's behavior can usually be traced back to their parents. I have disliked plenty of parents over the years, but this was the first and only child I ever genuinely disliked. In fact, I quit my second job because this child would have been placed in my group otherwise. The family involved consisted of Martha, the mother, who was around 35 years old and a former nurse; David, the father, who was about 45 and worked as a professor; Ben, their son, who was between 7 and 9 years old during these events; and Gabby, their daughter, who was between 5 and 7 at the time. I was 27 to 29 during this period. My direct supervisor, Donna, who also happened to be my best friend's older sister, was around 34 to 36. For ease of remembering, all names have been changed. The first major incident with Ben happened when he got in trouble for going into the relaxation corner. This was basically a poorly made teepee with some stuffed animals, meant for just one child at a time so they could calm down after a temper tantrum. Ben, however, had gone in with 2 other kids and demanded that they kiss. This was not the first time he had done something inappropriate like this. It was at least the third. From what I know, the whole incident lasted only about 10 seconds, just long enough for the staff member nearby to hear what he said. He was then sent to Donna's office, which was essentially treated like the principal's office. Once there, he refused to talk or sit on any of the furniture. Instead, he sat on the floor by the door against the wall. While sitting there, he asked her disturbing questions such as, "What would happen if I slammed your laptop on your fingers and broke them?" And, "What would happen if I shot you in the hand?" After that, he went into a detailed description of how he would burn down the entire building, which was filled with children ranging from 2 months old to 10 years old. His plan involved taking a screw from his counselor's desk drawer, unscrewing a light socket, stuffing it with tissues until it started smoking, screwing it back on, then getting his sister, locking all the doors, and not calling emergency services until it was too late. He was not punished for this by his parents. I know this because when David came to pick him up, Ben hid under a table and spoke in a baby voice, saying, "You're just going to lock me in my room again." David responded, "You won't be punished if you just get out from under the table." At that point, Ben happily bounced out from under the table in a great mood, showing no signs of having faced any real consequence. Another incident happened at a community pool. It was another child's birthday, who I'll call Kid C. This child didn't attend the after-school program, but Ben and another student, Kid B, did. The party was at the pool, and a coworker of mine happened to also be there, unrelated to the party, just enjoying the warm weather. Ben and Kid B were splashing around and roughhousing in the pool. Ben seemed frustrated. Suddenly, he started holding Kid B, who was about half a foot shorter than him, under the water. Both David and Kid B's father were watching from the sidelines. They began calling out to Ben when he wouldn't let go. According to Kid B's dad, the situation looked frantic. David, however, described it as mildly annoying. Eventually, Kid B's father had to physically jump into the pool and body check Ben to get him off his child. Without saying a word to anyone, he pulled his son out of the pool and left. Kid B never returned to the after-school program after that day. Going further back, I also had an earlier encounter with Martha that showed how unstable she could be. When I was in high school, about 13 years ago, I worked in a daycare after school. One day, Martha came in to pick up her niece-in-law. I didn't know her or the child at that point. However, I remember very clearly what happened because, in the middle of her visit, the child's mother suddenly stormed in and began screaming at Martha. She shouted that Martha was never to be around her child, that she was not allowed to contact their family, and she threatened to call the police if she did. She also accused Martha of using illegal substances and even called her a junkie. In the middle of her rant, she demanded that Martha's name be removed from the pickup list immediately. There was also the matter of their neighbor, who happened to be a friend of mine. She told me that the family went on walks every day, but she had to keep her dogs inside whenever they passed. The reason was that Ben had started throwing sticks and rocks at her dogs during these walks. When she brought this up to the parents, they refused to acknowledge his behavior, pretending as if nothing had happened. Another major issue came to light regarding Martha, who had been a nurse before leaving her job. At first, no one really cared why she left her position, since David's career as a professor meant they were financially comfortable. People simply assumed she had chosen to stay home and didn't bring it up again. The first real concern arose when the children were due for their vaccinations. The school sent home a cheerful reminder letter saying it was that time of year. When no response came, they sent the same friendly letter again. Around this time, the family also decided to stop sending their kids to the after-school program where I had worked. The reminders continued. Another, "Hey, you didn't respond" letter, followed by a more serious notice that reminded them it was a legal requirement. Finally, the school sent a final letter stating that since they were not responding to letters or phone calls, the children would not be allowed to attend after a certain date unless they were vaccinated or had an approved medical plan from a doctor. When the deadline came, the children still showed up at school and were immediately sent to the principal's office. The school nurse was instructed to call the family's pediatrician to verify whether the vaccinations had been given or if there was at least a medical plan in place. The conversation between the nurse and the doctor went something like this. Nurse: "Can you tell me if Ben and Gabby still need vaccine X and vaccine Y?" Doctor: "What? They actually need a whole lot more than that." At that point, the nurse and the doctor went through the records together and discovered something shocking. The children had not been vaccinated, but according to paperwork supposedly signed by the doctor, they were fully up to date. That was when it came to light that Martha had been a nurse at that very office until she was fired for forging documents. It appeared she had forged the signatures on her children's vaccination records as well. I never found out if she was legally prosecuted, but the school couldn't confront her directly about what they had discovered. First, because the children were present. Second, because it wasn't entirely clear whether the school should have known that information. And third, because Martha came in furious. She stormed into the school, screaming and live-streaming to her friends on social media. There is apparently still a video somewhere online of her shouting at the principal, the nurse, and several staff members. In the video, she rants about discrimination, vaccine science, falsified accusations, and insists her children deserve an education. At the same time, she yelled that the school had never taught her children anything and demanded they be admitted immediately. The police had to be called. Martha was eventually escorted out of the building, still screaming, while David, her enormous and silent husband, stood by without saying a word. The last I heard of them, Martha was claiming to homeschool the kids. However, not long afterward, she was rushed to a major hospital with severe injuries. She had fallen off her roof in the middle of the day, reportedly while under the influence of alcohol or other substances. The incident happened around 11 in the morning on what should have been a normal school day. Story 6. I don't feel like writing much today, but I wanted to share this. Right after I graduated from high school, I went to law school. I was excited, and my mom was even more excited than I was. I did very well in my first year. I was even praised by professors and classmates. Everything seemed like it could go well. However, my second year was much harder. My mind was so tired, and I started to struggle. I went from excellent to good to average, and eventually to what felt like a disaster. Every bad grade made me spiral into sadness, and the more down I felt, the worse I performed at the university. My mom didn't handle it well. She kept telling me that if I didn't succeed, I would be a failure in life, just like my dad. Because of that, I stopped telling her how I was doing or what my grades were. But she didn't stop there. She managed to convince a friend of hers, who was a math teacher at the same university, to look into the system and check my grades. When she found out, she exploded at me. This began a long period of nearly daily shouting matches, and I was far too depressed to handle it. I ended up repeating my second year, which was terrible. I was ashamed of myself. I tried to act like a ghost in the classroom. I stopped participating in anything extra, and I was just deeply depressed. The situation with my mom grew even worse, as I was clearly not doing well in any sense of the word. Eventually, I had to repeat that year again. After that, I was no longer allowed to register for classes at the university. This was the start of my mom calling me a failure for years, constantly comparing me to literally anyone younger than me who had already graduated. Now, she even compares me to children in school who are doing robotics projects with government programs, just to remind me of how she thinks I failed in life. Now, for the part that explains the title, my mom was cheated on by my dad when I was a child. It was a very traumatic experience because my dad became violent during that time. He still lives with the woman he had an affair with, and she made sure to benefit financially from him. My dad even paid for her to attend law school in another state, and she eventually became a lawyer. I should also mention that my dad is a very well-known, highly successful lawyer where we live. My mom rages at the fact that my dad paid for his affair partner's law school, and she takes it out on me, often saying, "Why couldn't you do it when that woman did?" On top of all of this, my mom never divorced my dad. They went back and forth for years. I usually say that's because neither of them would agree on divorce terms unless it left the other completely stripped of resources. Also, the laws in my country made things worse. At that time, you needed to prove you were separated with no contact for at least 2 years, along with other frustrating requirements. So, 15 years went by without a divorce. That was until last year when my dad used a relatively new law that allows one-sided divorce for lack of affection. They finally got divorced, mostly because my mom could not legally challenge it. However, there still needs to be a trial for the division of marital property, which hasn't happened yet. To make matters worse for my mom, in the divorce lawsuit we received, my dad's affair partner appeared as his lawyer. That made my mom furious. This is when she told me, "If you had finished law school, you could have been my lawyer." It was not the first time my mom had said something like this. In fact, she used to say it quite often when I was still in university. But I knew for certain that I didn't want to go into civil or criminal law. I didn't want to deal with other people's personal dramas, nor did I want to handle cases involving criminals. I often voiced that I was interested in constitutional and public law, and even copyright law. While copyright law wasn't offered as a class, I was doing well in my public law courses and felt confident that it was where I wanted to focus. So, when my mom told me I should have been her lawyer, I replied, "I would have never been your lawyer. I wouldn't touch your case with a 39.5-foot pole." She then went on a long rant about how much of a traitor I was, accusing me of abandoning her to deal with her divorce on her own. I was often told by others, "That's between your parents, and you shouldn't have a say in it." But that statement frustrates me deeply because I was always in the middle of it. I was used as a pawn by both of them for years. I was told daily by my mom that if I didn't do well in school, I would end up like my dad. I was constantly compared to him in order to put me down. I was used as a messenger between them because they refused to talk directly to each other. Even when my dad finally filed for divorce, the court called me because they couldn't reach my mom. For years, my mom told me she wanted me to go to law school so I could be her divorce lawyer. But now that I'm in my late 20s, I'm suddenly told that I should have nothing to do with their marital problems, despite the fact that they made those problems my burden from childhood onward.